All right, we want to thank everybody for joining us today. We'll be getting started here in about 5 minutes. We want to thank everybody for joining us this morning. We'll give everybody about 2 more minutes to get logged in here, and then we'll get started. All right, we've got a few more joining us right now, so we'll get started here in about 30 seconds. All right. Well, we want to thank everybody for joining us this morning. It's great to be here doing this webinar. Looking forward, I see a lot of attendees today, a lot of longtime clients, and a lot of new faces as well. But I'll tell you, we're looking forward to seeing everybody in person again sometime, and it really getting these conferences going again, and being able to get out and do some things. Um, so appreciate everybody joining us today. We're going to talk to you today about COVID-19 and its impact on retail now, but also in the future, and what we're expecting as we move forward here. So again, want to thank everybody for joining us. There's a couple of things I want to point out before we get started here. We will be recording this webinar, so don't worry too much about scribbling down notes as quick as you can. We will get a copy of the recording, and then we will get a copy of the slides sent out to everybody before the end of the day today. So wanted to make sure we said that. Also, as we move forward in the webinar, if you have questions, feel free to ask. There's a Q&A button at the bottom, should be at the bottom of your screen, that you can actually fill out the question. We'll be monitoring that all day, all during the webinar today. So we'll try to answer those as they come in. And then we'll also leave a few minutes at the end for questions as well. But we're just going to jump into this. So I want to thank Jason Greiner for joining us. Jason is the executive director of the Wylie, Texas Economic Development Corporation. Jason, I appreciate you joining us today. Jason and the Wylie EDC have been a longtime client of the Retail Coach, but even more than that, just a good friend. So Jason, I appreciate you joining us today. If you don't mind, tell everybody a little bit about your background.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I've been here in Wylie for 5 years, came in as the assistant director, and my boss recently retired earlier this year. And there were some people that questioned his timing, leaving an organization right when we're really at the cusp of redevelopment, revitalization, and this really kind of final push for a build out in our community. And then COVID set in and everyone thought he was a genius. So his timing was impeccable to hand me the reins right when this whole thing started. So I've been here 5 years. I was in Longview 3 years doing business development. Worked with the regional groups out there to promote East Texas. And prior to that, I worked 5 years more on the consulting side. Started off my run with economic development, really doing marketing and lead generation for economic development entities all across North America. We had clients in Mexico and Canada and from coast to coast. And then really the last 3 years of my experience there, we really kind of spun over to doing more site location consulting. I work more with the end users, both retailers and industry, your larger manufacturers and distribution, helping them find sites across the country and doing more site selection analysis for utility analysis all the way down to distribution rings and everything else. So,
yeah. And Jason knows how these sites think, what they look for when they're first looking at a community, what they look for as they're looking to close in and make a deal. So, Jason, I'll look to you with questions, and you always have answers. But I think Sam kind of handing the reins over to you when he did, with everything happening in Wylie, with redevelopment opportunities, development opportunities. That just kind of goes to show his faith he had in you. So we're excited for you to join us today. Most everybody on this call knows me, but I am the president of the Retail Coach. Have been part of the Retail Coach now for 13 years. Hard to believe it's been that long, but excited to see what we're doing as a company and really helping municipalities and economic development organizations. So just a little bit about us and what we do for anybody that's new on here. At the Retail Coach, we work with municipalities and economic development organizations. So really what that means is we're helping bring in retail. We're helping bring in development, looking at what the opportunities are, what sites are available, who fits your market, and then going out and getting them. So just in the last 5 years, we've recruited about 6 million square feet of retail, which turns into 600 million in new sales tax generated for our clients. So that's a little bit about us, but I really want to jump into talking about COVID-19 and what we're expecting. So two-phased approach to this presentation or this webinar. Number one, we're going to talk about the trends and what we're seeing come out of COVID-19, trends in the retail industry. So we'll talk about that, and then we're going to talk about how to develop a retail recruitment strategy for your community, really right now during COVID-19, but also moving forward. So like I said, we'll just jump into this. So some of those trends that we're seeing right now, one of them is it's been the great pause. Really, whenever no matter where you are in the U.S. Today, there was a pause in the retail industry, especially brick and mortar. Most of us went on quarantine. A lot of the retailers, a lot of the restaurants shut down. So you can kind of see on this graph here on the right here from eMarketer, we saw a decrease in retail sales by about 10.5%. Is what we're expecting for 2020. I've seen numbers that say that's going to be, maybe as much as 15% decrease in retail sales in 2020. So the great pause of 2020. But the good news is we're on the upswing. And what I wanted to point out on this screen is we're expecting retail growth to continue into 2021, 2022, and moving forward. We are expecting brick and mortar sales to decrease by about 14%. So brick and mortar stores are the ones that have been hit the hardest. Quite honestly, they had to shut down, most of them. Unless you were considered an essential business, most of the brick and mortar stores shut down at least a period of time, some longer than others. But as I mentioned, 2021 and beyond is looking good for all of retail. Brick and mortar, online, we're expecting to see some continued increases there. One thing that's interesting is that really the high, it's to be expected, but it's the increase in e-commerce sales. We've seen e-commerce really take off. It was already starting to take off over the last 10 to 20 years, but during COVID, a lot of retailers were forced into becoming an e-commerce retailer. So even the smaller businesses were really, if you wanted to compete, you had to become an e-commerce retailer. So we started to see that even with local and downtown businesses really having to get into more of an e-commerce mentality and looking at that. But really what it was were those contactless, the transactions for the safety measures, the forced adoption of e-commerce had to take place. Even some of the older crowd out there. So my grandparents were having to figure out e-commerce. Just that's where we were. That's how we were able to kind of get through COVID, and as we hopefully are on the downturn here from that standpoint. But e-commerce sales increased, as you can see, in 2020. You saw that increase happen dramatically, so up about 14.5%. But the good news is we're not expecting e-commerce to continue at a very fast rise. We're expecting that to kind of level off going forward as we move. So we're kind of creating a 2-year period of normal growth. But here is the key. E-commerce does not necessarily mean loss for brick and mortar. What we've seen is e-commerce sales have been driven by a surge in what we call the click and collect sales. So that's when you go click on your computer and then go pick it up somewhere else and have it delivered. So specifically curbside pickup, where you buy online and pick up. Have you noticed that even in your smaller businesses, but at the Walmarts, at the Targets, they have designated spaces for curbside pickup. Jason, I noticed that when I was in town last in Wylie, Target has dedicated parking spots in Wylie to serve those consumers.
Yeah, all the bigger retailers pivoted to that, and we had a lot of small businesses downtown that really went to that same model. You've done presentations over the years about e-commerce really becoming a force in overall retail in this entire sector, but that growth, I think really with COVID, I think you just saw the emergence of some of the smaller businesses really pivot to that same platform, right? If they have the capability to sell online, they definitely took it there. Or you saw kind of a pivot to Facebook and other campaigns to try and help those businesses stay alive and continue to push their message.
Yeah, absolutely. And from an e-commerce standpoint, the click and collect e-commerce sales we talked about, that the projections for what 2020 is going to look like there is about 60.4% of e-commerce sales are going to be click and collect. So that's when you buy it and then go pick it up online. So it's interesting to see the change, but as a business, you really have to have a healthy mix of online and also brick and mortar sales. So that myth that brick and mortar sales, I've heard it for years, is going away. We will never truly go away from brick and mortar sales. So forget about that myth that's out there. So a couple of the sectors that I wanted to point out, we've seen, really what we've seen them do throughout COVID, whether it was up or down. I want to hit on a couple of these. So this is looking at the nation, looking at all of the U.S., but the impact was felt pretty heavily on dining. A lot of states shut down their restaurants or only allowed them to do curbside or delivery. So you can kind of see that. So this map is really from February 17th to August 31st. Basically, this is looking at visits to these restaurants. We saw a big peak really right around the end of February, early part of March. We saw a peak where there were talk of a shutdown. There was talk of quarantine. So we saw really a peak where people went out to eat because they wanted to get it because they weren't sure how long it would go before they could go out to eat again. So, but then as soon as the quarantines and the shutdowns happened, we saw really a dramatic drop, about 70% drop in restaurant visits. However, I can point out that we're on the upswing. So we're up another 40%, really started about the end of May time period, and it stayed pretty steady here. So the restaurants are still struggling, but people are going out to eat again. They're starting to get out there a little bit again. So that'll be interesting to see. But dining really took one of the hardest hits in the industry, but they've been able to pick it up. Fast food has done well. I will tell you that. Fast food has continued to do well for this. Jason and I are going to talk about Sonic and some other fast food users in a little bit, but they were able to do incredibly well. So it's really the casual sit-down restaurants that have had to deal with this the most. Groceries is an interesting sector. Before COVID was happening, a lot of the big kind of moderate price grocers, depending on where you're at, whether it was Kroger in another market or Smith's, or you're in Texas and it was HEB, we saw a big peak right around the end of February, early part of March. This was kind of that panic buying peak where everybody was buying up the toilet paper. Everybody was buying up, just food. They were afraid they weren't going to be able to get it. So we saw a big panic buying peak for the grocery industry, and then it dropped dramatically. But it's come up again. So it dropped about 50% from that peak, and now we're back up to doing pretty well. Jason, I know you sent over an article to me last night talking about the grocery industry, and we saw grocery sales skyrocket really in May and June, but since then we've seen them come back down to a little bit more reasonable levels.
Yeah. I mean, the whole thing with COVID, I mean, you've got different industries that are impacted in different ways. Grocery for us, I mean, you have to look a little bit further at the demographics, but our market is primarily families, primarily white collar. A lot of the shift in COVID really sent a lot of our workers home. And so they were finishing the fall, or I guess spring semester school this last year, and they were working from home. And I mean, you will get into some of that with Sonic and some of the others in a minute, but our grocery store sales did the same thing. There was a huge spike, and then it really, we were kind of back at pre-COVID levels on grocery. I mean, we're really kind of at the same levels. Again, you've got a house full of kids, you've got to feed them, right? So there was a panic buying, and then it's leveled back off. The same thing with dining in our market, which I thought was unique. I know every community is different, and how they respond and how fast they will rebound from this. But our market was rather resilient, and I think it had more to do with the amount of people that are working from home and have that disposable income.
Yeah, absolutely. So, it's interesting to see, and it depends on the market too. So what we've seen is for a lot of these categories, if you're a suburban market or you're a rural market, you've done really well during COVID-19. I was looking at some sales tax numbers where we've seen some increases in these communities, but the ones that were hit the hardest were your urban communities, and those communities that maybe had the malls or destination lifestyle centers. Those were the ones that really took the hardest hit.
I guess I need to preface that as well. We're 24, 26 miles northeast of downtown Dallas, right? So we're just east of Plano. If you were in downtown Plano, we're about 10, 15 minutes just straight east of there. Really, for us, we're a bedroom community, right? We're out here where we've got some good schools. We've got the quality of life out by two lakes. The one thing that we have been notoriously beat up for on social media for not having full service restaurants, not having enough to do for the children, right? We were a small agriculture, more of a manufacturing community. And then all of a sudden you've got this boom of growth and job creation in Richardson and Plano, and people could, it's essentially shifted the cities that are a little bit further north, and people could live this far out, right? And then you were only commuting back in to work at State Farm or some of the other success in the area. Our market then is grown accordingly, right? So you have the boom in commercial development. We don't have the full service restaurants. We don't have the entertainment. We don't have that entire side of this sector that was most impacted, right? We don't have those retailers that were like that. Most of our stuff was more QSR, fast food, not as many full service, not as much entertainment. So ours is drastically different.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've seen pretty much a sales tax increase over the last few months, right, Jason?
Yeah, we're actually up for the year. Our numbers, when we got the March numbers, we were a little bit nervous to see what happened. We saw the panic buying. You see the durable good purchases and everyone hoarding product. And then you have that next month we were really worried about, um, April. We were still up. And shockingly, we've only been down 1 month this entire year. And it was actually, I think, last November. So it was actually all back before COVID. We'll end up, by all estimates, probably 10% up over last year's sales tax
Wow.
number.
Wow. Well, another category to look at is home improvement. And home improvement really had the biggest increases out of any of the categories out there. And it was interesting. Home improvement obviously was considered essential, but your Home Depots, your Lowe's, your Tractor Supplies, they've done incredibly well throughout COVID. And this graph just kind of goes to show that, they had a little bit of a downturn kind of when a lot of these states shut down for a little bit. But other than that, home improvement has been up and doing incredibly well. And I will tell you, before COVID, Lowe's, Home Depot, some of those others like that, Menards, depending on the market, they weren't doing very well. But I think what COVID is doing to these is they're going to come back and be stronger than ever. So if you were looking to recruit a Home Depot, you were looking to recruit a Menards or a Lowe's or somebody like that, I think your chances are pretty good now for getting back in front of you're a smaller community, Tractor Supply or Atwoods or something like that. So I think what drove the improvement was people were bored. People they from work, they would get done during the day, or they would get done at the end of the day, and they needed something to work on. So there's spring cleaning happening, there were projects happening, where people had time and they were out there spending their money at these home improvement stores. So home improvement has probably done better than any other category out there. And Jason, you saw that at your Home Depot. I mean, your Home Depot, I drove by there not too long ago. It was the most crowded I've ever seen it.
Yeah, we joked about that magic to-do list on your fridge, and all the things that kept getting added to it, and it sent us to those stores to buy product. I don't have the numbers after June 7th, but the report that you ran for us previously, we had 8 straight weeks of over 100% increase in traffic at our local home improvement store.
Yeah, which is honestly amazing. One other category I wanted to look at is superstores. So this is your Walmarts, these are your Targets, your Costco's, the big box retailers. So again, just like we saw with the groceries, we saw that panic buying peak, and then we saw a drop, and then it leveled off. So the good news is, even though we're not seeing as many visits as maybe we did pre-COVID, what's leading to that is not as many people are going to the grocery store. So maybe it's a mom or a dad going to the grocery store, but not taking their kids. So we've actually seen an increase in money spent at Walmart's and money spent at Target and other, Costco as well. But we're just not taking as many people to these superstores with us. So good news is some of those in a lot of the communities we're on here, these are a lot of your biggest retail players, or they're your largest sales tax players. So the good news is we've seen actually sales tax increase in most of these superstores. And then last one is apparel. We saw a big drop. Most apparel stores were closed in April. Marshall's, TJX, they were some of the last to open back up. They're open back up again, and they're creeping up closer. They're almost back to pre-COVID levels. So the good news is the stores, especially with back to school shopping happening, we're expecting to see apparel continue to rise as we go forward. So I want to talk about some of the other trends that we're seeing, Jason. One of those is big discounts. Really until the end of the year, I expect to see some big discounts and maybe into the first quarter from these retailers and these restaurants. And really what's driving that is a lot of them have too much stock. They've got too much inventory. Not selling a lot of their spring clothing or summer clothing. They've got inventory that they're going to reduce at some pretty drastic prices. So we're actually starting to see some huge discounts that you would typically only see Black Friday. Have you noticed that, Jason, when you've been out shopping or just been around town? Have you seen quite a few sales happening?
Yeah, I think everyone just trying to get people back out, right? It's as you hear too many times, the new normal. I hope it's not the new normal. I hope that people can get back out and be safe and get back out there. But mean, the ones that have a larger online presence, I mean, like they're doing better curbside and pickup, and they're just doing more volume, right? And then I think also the audience really has a lot to do with it. But discounts, I mean, that's always been a ploy in retail, right? It's the right color and the right discount, and you can lure people out. I always joked, my mom never went to Kohl's whenever they'd send 10 or 20% off discounts, but every time they sent a 30, she'd go every single time. And they got smart enough with their analytics, and they realized that every time she got a 30% off discount, she'd come in. Well, all of a sudden they started sending her nothing but 30% off discounts. And she was like, I don't know, they sent it all the time. That's just a nice way for them to get some people back in the stores.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Another trend we're seeing is really, and everybody's seeing this, the curbside and delivery apps. We talked about this earlier, but even the small businesses are taking on curbside and delivery. So I'm going to flip it. Jason, talk to us a little bit about your Wylie takeout and delivery Facebook page y'all set up.
Yeah, we right at the beginning of this really kind of looked at what you can do to help some of these businesses, right? And it was really kind of help them understand we're here for them first and foremost, really to support our small businesses, and really started the Wylie Takeout and Delivery page. We worked in collaboration with the city, and the city put this together pretty quickly, threw some branding together, and then we all promoted it. The downtown merchants, the Chamber of Commerce, the EDC, the city, citizens got behind this. You see on there, there's 3,800 members on there. We have other active Facebook pages. This was just one where it was, hey, come put your special, come put your discount, come put whatever it is that you've got, what programs you've got going on. And then this was the group of people that really weren't going to be deterred by COVID. We put on masks and gloves and put on hand sanitizer, and off we went to try and support these local businesses. We joked about the COVID-19 essentially is more like the freshman 15 in college with weight gain. I ate out more than I've ever eaten out in, I think, my entire lifetime. So it's like you just, anything we can do to try and help those businesses. And kind of flip side of this, we looked at this, and once the grocery stores were raided and really all of the products were purchased, we see this downturn. Deliveries were interrupted, and then you see kind of, we didn't know how long that would last. Pretty quickly, I came from the bar industry and worked over in restaurants and bars for a number of years, and I know distribution rings over there are significantly different than the grocery stores, right? So you got Cisco, Benny Keith, and Foods, and so many others that your fresh produce comes in from other areas. We actually worked with area nonprofits that if people were let go, where do they go? To the area food banks. And we worked with some of our nonprofits and kind of piggybacked off this Wylie Takeout and Delivery, but what we're trying to do is pivot to the grocery stores. Like the grocery stores can order all the food and all the produce. They can order toilet paper. And we saw a huge pivot, not only just in the offering of the local restaurants to be able to say, hey, I can order whatever product you need. I actually had some restaurants that called, Cisco was one of them in our market. They sent an entire truck of food to an area nonprofit because they knew that product was going to go bad. And just creating that connection in our community, just tying our local businesses to the area nonprofits in a time of need. We actually pivoted. I couldn't imagine it was available, but I ended up buying teamuptofighthunger.com, the URL, and we jumped at the opportunity to try and figure out how to do food vouchers. We got area food vouchers in our nonprofits and trying to help the people that really need the food in the time of need. And that food voucher then could be redeemed at restaurants where we're, they were the ones that were hurting through this whole thing. People quit going in, and it allowed them to keep some of their staff, at least pivot some of their employees over to delivery. So it just, anything you can do to help them, right?
Yeah, no, that's amazing what y'all have done with the food pantries, and kudos to y'all, because that's just a really cool thing. And then also with the Facebook page for the Wylie Takeout and Delivery, I was scrolling through that last night after you sent that over, and was really looking at it. It's pretty cool. I mean, a lot of your local businesses really jumped in on that and took advantage of it. So kudos to y'all. That's awesome. One other or a couple other impacts or trends we're going to see right now is we're going to see more retail space become available. So we're expecting with, some recent announcements, whether it was Stein Mart, Tuesday Morning, JCPenney's, others that you've heard about recently, there will be an influx of available space, retail space. So junior and big box space available in the market. So that is something we're going to see. I will tell you, I've read a couple of articles talking about, COVID-19 killed a lot of these retailers, killed Stein Mart. Is in the process of hurting, if not killing, Tuesday Morning. I will tell you, we've known about these retailers struggling. Pier 1's another one for years. And it was not just COVID-19. COVID-19 might have been that last nail in the coffin, but it was not because of COVID-19 that they shut down. So I think most of our retailers, most of our national retailers and restaurants are going to come out of COVID-19 okay. Um, thank goodness. But, wanted to kind of point that out. So retail space, we're going to see an influx becoming available.
Yep. Aaron, on some of your previous presentations over the years, you've talked about trends with some of the retailers that are coming and going and some of the new store expansions, and each year they kind of ramp up differently. Be interesting to go back and look at that too, because you've been reporting on those for a long time. A lot of people, in our world in economic development, plant closures and store locations and closures are often negatively viewed, right? But if you look behind the closure, if you work with those companies when they close, there's a release of workforce, right? So there's an opportunity for some of their other companies. And honestly, from a recruitment standpoint, if a company wasn't doing that well, prior to this, if COVID was kind of that nail in the coffin for some of these businesses, think about some of the other businesses that you can bring in behind them. It creates an opportunity for you to recruit another business to town too. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to kind of piggyback on that, if you did lose a big box retailer, so let's say you are a community that lost a JCPenney, there's not a whole lot of big box retailers left. A lot of them are shrinking the size of their stores and doing those sort of things. So when you have a big box like this, kind of look at it as, maybe the potential to bring in 3 new businesses versus just one large one. So that's a way to look at that. Some of the other trends that we've seen, websites. We're going to talk about this more later, so I won't spend too much time on it, but it's imperative that all businesses have websites. Even your small local businesses. We like to say in the industry, if you don't have a website, you don't exist. So you absolutely have to have a website. Jason, I know you've been preaching that for years, that your small businesses need to be on social media. They need to have websites, those sort of things. Make sure that your local businesses, regional, national, they all have a presence on the web. One of the other kind of interesting things that came out of COVID was sales. So bike sales have been through the roof. My son's birthday was in June. He had turned, and we were looking for a bike to buy him for his birthday. That's what he wanted. Well, I guess I didn't realize how you couldn't find a bike anywhere. So I think I went to every academy in Texas, every Walmart, 2 or 3 times a day. My dad did the same thing up in the Dallas-Fort Worth area looking for us. We finally found a bike, but people were getting outside more. They were spending more time outside. They needed things for their kids to do. So I actually went to Academy a couple days ago. They still weren't even stocked up on bikes. So there's, I guess I should have bought stock in Huffy, back a year ago. I'd be doing well. Another one that's going to be interesting to see, another category, is home gyms. We've seen a lot of people transition maybe offices or rooms in their houses to home gyms. So we're expecting to see people, as we move forward here, less likely to renew their gym memberships. People spending money on ellipticals and other items. So home gyms have been struggling, but we have seen nutrition-based retailers do very well. So some consumers have become more health conscious. Now, Jason and I, we've gone out to eat more during COVID-19 than we ever have. So we're not necessarily in this case. I will probably be heading to a nutritionist soon. But it's interesting to see that. Jason, it'd be funny. You and I did a webinar. It was either a year ago together, and I had our pictures on our bios up there. I should have had, before and after COVID-19. I should have put a slide for that, but probably a good thing I didn't. Yeah, because I know I've gained about 10 pounds. But interesting to see. Also, talking about home offices. Pre-pandemic, about 10 to 15% of homes had a dedicated home office. Now, post-pandemic, we're expecting 75% of homes to have a home office, some sort of home office. For some people, it might be a classroom. If your kids aren't back to school yet or going to back to school, some people are designating areas in the house for classrooms. So it's going to be interesting to see. Jason, with more people working from home, I think that's going to have a positive impact on Wylie, especially as it relates to maybe the casual restaurant industry. Have you thought about that at all?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like that's one thing that I mean we go through the same assessment every year, ICSE or Recon or going down to Retail Live. You know, we talk to the same retailers, and it's you get them on your list, and you know that you're close. Once you get to that certain daytime population, once you get to that certain traffic count, well, we have the traffic counts, we have the buying power, we have a lot of that. The trick to it for us is we're still mostly commuter market, right? Well, how
Yeah.
did that change? Well, with most of the people that are in our area, that they have the flexibility to stay home. There's some of these companies, you know, I saw JP Morgan walk that back the other day. They saw a drop in overall productivity. So they're telling people, hey, guess what? You're coming back to work. You know, there's some of these companies that said, hey, prove to us you wanted more flex time, prove to us that you can work from home. And there's some people that have really taken that to heart and they take it seriously. They've I think been able to pretty much lock in the ability for them to work from home indefinitely then, right? So some of these companies are
Yeah.
changing. Look at office trends, you know, the centralized office product, you talk about co-working and some of the other big office products. I don't, you know, I don't know how many of you are in the metropolitan areas, but I mean, there's been a kind of a mass exodus from some of that space. I think that from talking with other people in the industry and other brokers, in that space. I think that there's going to be more of a decentralized office product. You know, some people are not going to maybe come back into that one major home office downtown. There might be an opportunity for the suburbs. There might be an opportunity for communities like ours to capitalize on some of that, get them back out of their house. But even if they're in the house, guess what? That's increased daytime population for us. I mean, I'm curious to see what our traffic counts are going to do. I didn't even pull them when we got into
Yeah.
COVID with everybody staying home, right? I didn't feel like wasting the money there. We knew that it was going to really fall off.
Sure.
I don't know what they're going to do this next year, but that's really for us is trying to calculate our daytime population now that, you know, kind of prior to COVID and kind of in the middle of this situation that we're in now versus maybe the next couple of years, that has to shift our overall daytime population. It has to shift our buying power. If we can prove that the people are here and we can prove that they're still spending money, you think that some restaurants and some other concepts would be receptive to that as well.
Absolutely. Daytime population is the most important thing to restaurants. They typically they can do well in the evenings, but during lunchtime, that's sometimes when they struggle, especially in suburban markets. So I think it's going to have a positive impact, like you said. Some other modifications that we're seeing to restaurants in the industry is really expanded outdoor seating. Now, that's easy to do in Texas where we are, but not as easy up in the Northeast or up in the Midwest because of, cold as it gets a lot of times. So be interesting to see expanded outdoor seating. We're already starting to see that in new kind of restaurant designs that we'll share here in a minute. We're starting to see socially distanced environments. We're seeing that limited menus, hands-free menus. How many of you have, scanned a QR code to get a menu? Something we're going to continue to see additional delivery and takeout options. And then one that's interesting to me is a lot of these restaurants are providing ingredients so that you can go cook the meals at your own home and do it that way. So kind of some interesting trends to see there, but I think I think these trends are going to stay with us at least for a couple more months. And then again, as the society becomes more germ cautious, we'll continue to see no touch deliveries and shopping experiences. This one kills me to say, but I think we're going to not see nearly as many buffets or salad bars anymore. You can't find a good salad bar anymore. You haven't been able to in the last 20 years, but I think we're going to start seeing those go away. And then it's going to kill me too. No sampling at, the Sam's Clubs or the Costco's. That makes going to those stores fun. So I think that's going to be something we see. And then less focus on brand loyalty. With a lot of items or a lot of brands not being able to keep up with enough supply, people have become less brand loyal during the pandemic. So it'll be interesting to see how that continues as we come out of COVID-19 in the future. Jason, I want you to talk about this a little bit. I know you have some thoughts on Amazon, but Amazon and a lot of these other e-commerce retailers have thrived really during the pandemic. I didn't have a graph showing that, but we saw the overall e-commerce platforms do very well. But really the key is finding a healthy mix of online and brick and mortar. You have anything you want to add on that? I know we talked a little bit about Amazon, Jason.
Yeah, for any of the municipal employees here, if you've got someone that works for a city, I mean, the cities have access to the sales tax collection to the comptroller, right? You can get a consultant to get that if you don't have access to it. But you can see that. I can't do anything with it, right? I can't show you the increase in Amazon sales in our market, but it was interesting to see the transition, setting in with COVID. You talk to people and it's like, I'm thinking, hey, support local businesses. And then there's a whole nother group of people that are fearing for their life with COVID, and they don't want to put on a mask and use hand sanitizer. They want to isolate in place and stay home. So it's funny to hear some of the conversations, they're ordering, at Walmart, pulling through Walmart or Kroger and getting the groceries put in the back of their pickup truck, and any of the dry goods, the non-perishable items, they're leaving a garage for a week, and let let it all settle out, and then go through and clean everything. Amazon sales just went through the roof in our market. And you really think about it, what can you buy on Amazon? Almost everything. I mean, like we run low on something, and we need diapers at the house. My wife is like, oh, we'll be here tomorrow. And it's like, you don't even get out of the store to go pick them up anymore. It's like, what all can you order from these places? They'll all deliver to you. Or worst case scenario, you can just drive by and pick it up at that location, right? So they'll order it from another store location. They'll get it from a DC. It'll be sorted back into your market, and you stop by Lowe's or Home Depot, and guess what? You call inside and they'll walk it out to you and they'll hand it to you. You don't even have to go in the store. It's been a good pivot, but we saw those sales just go through the roof.
Yeah, absolutely. And like we said, we're expecting those sales to continue to rise in the near future, but they're going to level off at some point. So e-commerce is not going away, but neither is brick and mortar. So you're going to have both options really going forward there. Jason, we had a question come in from Jenny. Jenny said, what are your thoughts on enclosed patios via the clear tents and heaters to extend patio dining as the weather gets cold? She mentions Paris has outdoor seating year round, no matter the weather, and it's amazing. So that's a great question, but we are expecting to continue to see kind of those temporary enclosed patios with the tents and those sort of things. The key there, I heard a retailer talking about the other day, is they're working on some new ventilation systems to keep the air and ventilation flowing in and out while at the same time being able to heat it. So I think that's a great point. We're going to continue to see, especially in our colder climates, we're going to see kind of the enclosed patios for temporary as it gets colder.
We've actually done this before. If you go back in time, anyone that was in the bar and restaurant industry would remember this, or anyone that used to run around in downtown Dallas. When Dallas went to non-smoking, they actually required separate ventilation systems between smoking sections in restaurants and bars and actually non-smoking sections. So I think you have a similar pivot with companies that can afford maybe different ventilation systems or outside seating versus indoor seating. We saw a restaurant here in the community put up the plastic, and I thought it was in preparation for the colder weather. I think it was actually to separate kind of people on the patio that might be smoking versus people when they open those windows. It's actually indoor outdoor seating in the restaurant space. There's new technology coming out. I talked with an industrial broker the other day, and he was talking about some new technology with ionization, and there's machines that you can buy. They're not very expensive. We know UV works, but at the same time, ionization of the air. There might be some new technology that all these retailers are flocking to when we go to ICSC. Hopefully this next year, everybody knows about that technology.
So Jenny also made a great point that she's heard that the cost of ventilation or enclosing those patios is high, which it is. Yeah. So basically these restaurants are going to have to figure out, do a cost benefit analysis basically to see, if they open up those patios, is it going to be worth their time? And I think just like anything, that technology and this stuff will go down in price over time. But I do think we're going to see more of that. I want to shift focus here and talk about some of the new retail concepts. So some of the new retail concepts that have kind of come out of COVID-19, but also have been in the works for some time. A good example is Macy's. Macy's has a new concept. Their first one is in Southlake, Texas. So just outside of the DFW area. If you're in Southlake, you need to check it out. But it's more of a flexible retail store format. They call it Market by Macy's, and it's about a 20,000 square foot store. What I like about it's more of a experiential type retailer. So they're having community-driven programming. So they're having community meetings there. They're doing cooking tutorials. They're doing book signing, crafting, fitness classes. So I think that's one of the things that we'll see. But Macy's, which traditionally has been 80,000 square feet or more, they're shifting and doing small concepts. And they're figuring out that's what it's going to take is smaller square footage. So I thought a pretty interesting concept there. Another interesting concept that's out and expanding outside. They've started in Texas, but they're expanding outside of Texas as well. is a group called HTO. And what HTO did is they saw the success that a lot of these coffee shops like Starbucks had, or like, Dunkin' Donuts has had. And they now offer, and Sonic is another example that they looked into, but they now offer fresh brewed iced tea in Yeti coolers. So if you haven't seen an HTO, they're in Texas, they're expanding to Oklahoma, into the South, other states as well. But it's a new retail concept that's interesting and really works really well. They have happy hours during the day, but they have a drive-through. And you're going to see that as we move forward here. But a drive-through is a must going forward for fast foods, but also we're starting to see some of the quick casual and casual sit-down restaurants require drive-throughs as well. I was on a conference call a couple of weeks ago and heard that actually Olive Garden is playing around with a drive-through. So if Olive Garden, which is a casual sit-down restaurant, is looking at drive-through, you have to imagine other retailers and restaurants are. But this is another kind of interesting concept that's come about. And if you look at how they've done, HTO, and you look at how Starbucks has done and others like that, they've done pretty well through this pandemic.
Aaron, do you see that same trend with, I mean, we've seen the order ahead and pick up and kind of skip the line. Schlotsky's went to that. Jason's Deli went to that a couple of years ago. McAllister's, I don't know if it was just something that they were rolling out kind of prior to COVID or what, but they all of a sudden, the emergence of DoorDash and some of these last mile service delivery services. I mean, you see the delivery, if you prepaid, they just put it over in the cubicles over on the side. I mean, I've seen Chaloso, I've seen some other concepts adopt that. That wasn't in their initial floor plan. It's just contactless delivery, right? Well, that's more convenient. Order ahead of time, walk in and pick it up. And it's just driving that either through an app or through a website. It's just technology driven, but it's convenient. You don't have to stand in that line. You can have your favorite food and get in and get back out and get back to the office and be productive. So,
yeah, and like you said, we saw that pre-COVID-19, but what's happened with COVID-19 has just accelerated that, and it's just made it happen that much quicker. So, yeah, great point there. McAllister's is just one of many that are doing it.
That's an easy fix for local retailers too. So I mean, like your mom and pop place, that's some plywood. It's some shelving. It's just setting up a designated area for customers to come in and pick up product and get back out. I don't know how many smaller mom and pop places are thinking like that, but it's a one more way to kind of pivot in the middle of this. But.
Absolutely. Another concept that's kind of changing and evolving is Michael's. So everybody I would think knows the Michael's, the craft store. They've been debuted an enhanced shopping experience complete with a new layout. They've got inspiration hubs. They have innovative checkout designs, contactless checkout designs. They opened up their concept. The two locations that have this new concept are McKinney and Plano. These were existing stores, but they remodeled them, and they're going to be expanding this nationwide. They've got concrete floors, updated signage, lower fixturing to allow really customers to kind of easily navigate their stores, find out where they need to go. You can see on the screen here, this kind of shows that the new checkout center they have. What's interesting is they have the new shop and scan feature, so you can actually scan on your phone, the items, and then when you walk up there, you kind of just show them a QR code, and they'll do that. So very, very interesting. But they're also going to have more kind of additional storage. You can kind of see in this picture, but behind the checkout counters, they've got storage containers. And what that's going to be is for curbside delivery and basically pick up online, or buy and then pick up online. So I think we're going to see this happen a lot as we kind of move forward here. You're already seeing that. I went into a Walmart recently and they had this huge, I don't even know what it was, looked like a huge elevator for store pickup. And that's where you would kind of go type in your information and it would spit out your item that you had ordered. Best Buy is doing a similar thing. So Michael's is taking advantage of really what's happening to better themselves in this market. And then also, I thought this was interesting, but they also have what they call a maker space. So where you can go in, if you want to do even craft you're doing, or you want to bring the kids with you, they have this maker space where you can use their items for free. There's the rulers, a lot of different things for free, and really do it there. So they're trying to create an experience in their stores, which will continue to happen going forward. And it's all free of charge, this makerspace. So I thought that was pretty cool to see. One concept that is interesting to see is the new Burger King concept and what that's going to look like. But they've unveiled a new design kind of post COVID-19 that they're going to roll out. 60% smaller than their traditional Burger Kings. Really aimed at improving kind of the guest experience. They're offering multiple ordering and delivery methods. You can kind of see that you got, drive-throughs going in one direction. You've got order online where you already ordered and you can pick it up. They actually have a walk-up, so they have a walk-up window, so you can walk up to the walk-up window. You can sit inside, but then also it's interesting. But their kitchen is on story, and then they have outdoor dining as well. So Burger King is also trying to stay with the times, kind of, and really focus on this going forward. So it's gonna be pretty interesting to see these new concepts come out. Taco Bell's doing the same thing. Taco Bell's rolling out their new Go Mobile concept. It's going to open. Their first one will make its debut in the first quarter of 2021. But they're about half the size of a typical Taco Bell. And again, they're going to have a dual drive-through. I don't know that I've ever seen a dual drive-through Taco Bell. So you're going to see them take advantage of the dual drive-through, which, Chick-fil-A started, McDonald's has done. They're going to have curbside pickup. They're going to have bellhops. Jason, have you been to Chick-fil-A in Wylie and seen how they have the bellhops out there to speed things through the process?
Yeah, our kid got a job at when we were over in Allen too. Our kid got a job at that Chick-fil-A on McDermott over there off 75, and I've never seen a Chick-fil-A do this does it anywhere else, but it's like 3 lanes all the way around, and they've got people that are sorting traffic out there, directing traffic, and then they take your order. They've got cash boxes to speed up the whole process if you want to pay with cash, or they'll take your credit card all the way out and around. I've just never seen a 3-lane Chick-fil-A before, all the way out and around. But they'll deliver your out in the parking lot. So
yeah, exactly. And they Chick-fil-A has struggled a little bit, but now they're back almost to where they were pre-COVID-19. But they had this kind of figured out. They were set up already for curbside and pickup and delivery. So it's good to see Taco Bell's taking advantage of that. So is Burger King.
the funny thing about our numbers actually dipped, right? So our store location, they couldn't get into the store, so it made sense that they actually add an extra lane. They have the capacity to produce that much product. They just couldn't get people through there fast enough. So adding a lane and then also being able to order from an app or order online and then pick them up in a parking lot, it just kept them busy. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And, another category or another restaurant that's doing this as well as a little bit on the larger scale and more of a casual type or quick casual is Shake Shack. So if you're familiar with Shake Shack, really good burgers and shakes. They're rolling out a new digital ordering experience, but you can kind of see what their drive-through is going to look like. A 3-lane drive-through, Jason. So one is going to be for app pickup and delivery, and then the other 2 will be for drive-throughs. So be prepared to go forward. If you're a municipality or an economic development organization, we're absolutely expecting to continue to see the drive-throughs, not just for fast food, but for the quick casual and also for some of the casual sit-down restaurants. So kind of be prepared for that.
I'd be curious to know parking requirements. The buildings are getting smaller, but from a planning and zoning standpoint, we're the ones that have to try and put that stuff in action right at the local level. So these changes that they go through, and you'll hear about them at ICSE, but getting communities to change those parking requirements on some of these, or getting a variance in parking requirement, you got to be flexible with these new concepts as they come out. It's always been an issue with manufacturing, right? With automation, so you're reducing the amount of parking. I'm just curious to see what happens with retail as they do the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple other things I want to talk about. Dunkin' Donuts. Well, I guess they're called Dunkin' now. They got rid of the Donuts name, but Dunkin'. They're rolling out kind of a new order ahead feature, just as trying to take advantage of that. What was interesting about them, their typical customer would be early morning, but now they've kind of shifted to where their busiest time of day is 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. So that kind of goes to show people aren't driving into work as much as they have in the past, kind of like we talked about, Jason. But a lot of these retailers and restaurants really need to pay attention to what the trends are and when their consumers are coming in and how that's things. So really, I want to jump in. I want to finish up these couple of slides and then jump into what you can be doing as municipalities. But so implications for local retailers and downtowns. Basically, local, regional, and mom and pop shops can still compete with the national retailers, but they have to adapt to the current retail climate. They have to be willing to change, and they have to be willing to adapt. So couple of things. If you're a small business or local retailer or downtown retailer, you've got to have an online presence. We talked about that already, but not just a website. You have to be active in social media. Um, you need to build an experiential retail focus. You need to do what some of these other retailers and restaurants are doing, such as Michael's. It needs to be an experience for your consumer for them to come in. And then one thing that's incredibly important is adopting this new technology. So you've got to take advantage of the mobile pay and the new systems that really improve the ease of purchase. A lot of people are not wanting to use cash, so you've got to offer Apple Pay. You've got to have that. You've got to have mobile pay. You've got to have Amazon Pay. You've got to offer all of these different things. A lot of local businesses in the past haven't accepted credit cards. It's time now. A lot of the credit card companies have decreased the percentage they charge on a credit card purchase. So if you're a local business or a mom and pop business, you have got to focus on really keeping up with the times and adapting. So real quick, Jason, let's look at Sonic. This is, so on the left side of your screens, you'll see March through August of this year for Sonic. So basically the pandemic time period. And then we show you what's happened at Sonic and Wylie from September 19th to February 20th. You want to touch on that, Jason, real quick?
I mean, it just, we had, with, how does the Chamber of Commerce, respond in time like this? Most chambers are heavily event driven, and if you can't do events, then where's your source of income, right? So we saw even the pivot with local organizations that were just trying to get entrepreneurs groups or mastermind groups or any of those concepts where people just wanted to gather and get together. I mean, when the weather was still nice, they actually did some get-togethers out in the larger parking lots and the shopping centers just to try and get people out there still and sit out and socially distance and have a meeting outside. We saw the same thing. Sonic was naturally set up for that. If you really think about it, it was contactless delivery, before this was really a thing with COVID, right? So I think through our analysis you even provided to us, we saw Sonic in the beginning part of the year was just doing their normal numbers, and then all of a sudden you get into April 6th through the 12th, huge. I mean, we saw over 220% increase locally at our Sonic through that time period. Every single morning you drive through there, it was packed. Every afternoon it was packed. Well, what was also happening? I mean, like, you've got kids at home, you got parents that are working remote, and they've got kids in the house. What are you doing? Getting out of the house, spending some time with your family. You go through, get a Sonic drink, and go to the lake or go to the park. And it was neat to see the pivot. But at the same time, I think Sonic sales have exploded, not even just in our market. You would know from a larger scale, but I can't help but think that Sonic would be one that would be an up and coming. They're probably looking at doing more stores in the middle of this. But
yeah, so across the country, they were up 127% during the pandemic, or they have been. So we talk to them on a regular basis, and they're expecting a huge rollout kind of post pandemic. So that's going to be really great to see. Also, so pre-COVID, for that 6 months prior to COVID, you had about 24,000 unique customers that went to your Sonic and Wylie. Post-COVID, the 6 months, or during COVID, the 6 months during, you've seen almost double that. So 43.9 thousand unique consumers that got there. Starbucks, real quick, I just wanted to show you. So again, on the left side of the screen is really during the pandemic, and then the right side of the screen is pre-pandemic. But we've seen really a shift in, now noon is the busiest time of day for Starbucks compared to previously it was 8 to 9 a.m. was the busiest time. So interesting to see how consumers' behavior is changing. So real quick, then we're going to open up for questions. I just want to emphasize a few things, Jason, as far as what communities can be doing right now to really take advantage of the retail industry and continue to develop and bring in new retail, new development. Because bottom line, retailers and restaurants are still making deals. A lot of these site selectors are at home needing to find sites. So it's up to you as municipalities and economic development organizations to get these retailers potential sites. So every retailer knows what they look for in a trade area population. They know what they look for when it comes to demographics and psychographics. They know what they look for in sites. But again, they're relying on you to help get them these sites. So one thing I want to emphasize is how important it is to really understand your retail trade area and understand where consumers are coming from. So in years, Jason, and you'll remember this from our time back in Longview together. We used a lot of times radials and drive times is used to determine trade areas. Well, just like in Longview, just like in Wylie, that doesn't tell the whole story. People are driving further distances than 10 minutes to come shop or eat. They're driving farther than 5 miles. So we started to use cell phone analysis technology, and that's really what we were using to look at the Sonic data, to look at the Starbucks data. But we were able to find out exactly where people were coming from to shop and eat in Wylie, how often they were coming, how long they were staying, where they were eating, how they were interacting through the community. And based off of that, for Wylie, we were able to determine a primary trade area, which you see on your screen here, of about 143,000 people. So much larger than the city limits, almost 3 times as large as the city limits, right, Jason?
Yeah.
Where people were coming in. Go ahead.
The interesting thing about our retail trade area, I think people, they think that we live in a bubble, right? So they don't understand, the labor market. Where's your labor market coming from? Where's your retail market coming from? I don't think you have our secondary retail trade area information on here, but it's over 220,000 people. Well, you think about it, and it's the Home Depot and Tractor Supply and Walmart, and that area to the northeast of our community on that map is largely unpopulated, right? So you've got some smaller communities over there that don't have those retailers in that area. We're still in Allen and Plano and Garland's retail trade area with some of the larger big box users and Academies and Dick's Sporting Goods and so many of those others. Until we have the density on the other side, it just, you wouldn't know this unless you have the capability to monitor this. And I know that you probably didn't want to come out here and sit in our parking lots and look at license plates either. So it's nice that you guys have come up with some new technology for tracking GPS information. But this is kind of spooky too. I think you worried some of our board members. You could tell where they parked at night, if they went by the shopping center.
Exactly. Well, and it's so much better than what we used to do, counting license plates and having to put those into the state databases to find out where people were coming from. It's so much nicer to be able to use cell phone technology, but it's worked really well in Wylie. And that's why we're starting to get more interest really daily from prospects. Couple of quick things, couple of additional slides I wanted to share with you. Very, very important to focus on population growth. Most of these retailers and restaurants, they want to know where your population is today, your trade area population, but really they want to know what it's going to look like in 5 years. So being able to show them what that population growth looks like is good. Jason, you're blessed to be in a community that's experiencing fast growth and will continue to experience growth in your trade area. But that's one thing you hear on a regular basis from retailers is what does that growth look like, right?
It's back into, it's not just the growth for, your reports help us show at a higher level what our market could potentially sustain in the number of consumers. It is, as a practitioner, you got to take that one step further and try and figure out site specific data as well. Retail Coach has been helpful with that, but if you don't have like Sites on Texas or Sites to Do Business, if you don't have some sort of a demographic tool to be able to run 1 3-5 mile radius, talk to a local real estate professional. They've a lot of times got subscriptions. You can run some of this analysis yourself, or you can have somebody run it for you. And 1 3-5 mile radius is going to be the typical model for most of your retailers. And again, it's just they can run those reports, but it's very important you have accurate data. If we went with what TxDOT reported for our traffic counts in our area, I would still have a really hard time recruiting retail to this community. You have to pay for your own counts. You have to understand which way is the going to work side of traffic. If you're talking to a breakfast user, you need to know where your traffic's coming from, where it's going in the afternoon. So it's very important to have accurate data.
Also not just that, but we rolled out a new product or a new report. We call it our retail demand outlook. So these retailers and restaurants, these developers, they don't just look at population now, but they look at it in the future, but they also look at what your demand is going to look like now, but in the future. So we rolled out a new report recently called our retail demand outlook. And basically it looks at what is the current demand, but it also looks at what is the retail demand going to look like in 2025. So that's incredibly important for these retailers to know that if they're going to open a store in your community, that they're going to be successful now, but in the future as well. A couple other things I want to emphasize, and then I want to jump into questions if anybody has them. Jason hit on this already, but you can't just go to a retailer and say, come to Wylie. You have to go to them and say, hey, we want you in Wylie. Here you fit. And then here's a site that will work for you. So what we do in working with Jason and other communities, we also put site profiles. So this kind of shows the one of the shoppers in town and what's available there, but also the demographics and how to contact Jason, how to contact myself. This one still has Sam's contact info on it, but they know to contact Jason, know to contact me with any questions they might have. It has the population information. It's up to you nowadays to provide these sites to the prospects. Want to also mention, make sure you target retailers that fit your community. I think this is kind of a funny slide, but are you a Bloomingdale's community or are you a Bloomingdale's community? Make sure you focus on retailers and restaurants that fit. If Chick-fil-A is not a fit right now, they might be 3 years down the road. So don't kind of waste their time. Don't waste your time going after them. Go after retailers and restaurants that fit and make sense at the moment. Just kind of to piggyback on that, each retailer, each restaurant, you can see Zaxby's here, Dunkin' Donuts, Firehouse Subs, they all look for certain traffic counts. They all look for certain trade area populations. They all look for certain average household incomes. They look for certain sites. So know this information ahead of time so that if you're meeting with them at a conference or, over Zoom, don't, have that information ready to go. So Jason, I know that you attend International Council of Shopping Center events with us and also Retail Live events, but do you want to talk about how important it is to kind of get out and get to some of these events in front of retailers and restaurants instead of just waiting for them to come to you?
Yeah, and I mean, every community is different too, right? So it's like this might be your only opportunity to get in front of some of these retailers. If you're not at these shows, then you're not going to be able to go talk to them. The ICSC show that happens in North Texas, that event's always been good. You get face to face with the broker or the company representative that's in charge of all their expansions. They'll tell you if they've got a franchisee in your market or if they're active in your area. They might like your community already. You might find out they've already done their homework and they know where you are. They're just looking for a franchisee in that area. You can set up franchise networks in your own communities. You can try and find other people, other entrepreneurs that might step up to the plate and actually fill that void. For us, we've got so many local brokers and we had national developers come in with our target center. We had InvenTrust who Vista Properties is that recently acquired the center. And then we had Clark Street out of Chicago. They also came in and put in the Kroger shopping center here. We have a larger presence with some of those guys. And then honestly, the brokers that work underneath them and for them, it allows us to ping those people. The mid-year update at ICSC local or Retail Live, and then you've got Recon out in Vegas. It's imperative to stay in front of those projects. Time, like on one of those other slides, you say time kills deals. Deals take time as well, right? So you might not have everything that you need that year. Talk to them about the updates. Talk to them about infrastructure investments. Talk to them about preparing sites and unlocking land and get them on the hook. That gives you something to talk about the next one. And when you're getting closer, they'll be ready to look at it, and sometimes it's just timing, so, one more opportunity.
Told me a long time ago, if you remember anything, remember this about the industry. It's not about what you know, it's about who you know. And just to kind of piggyback on what you're talking about, how important it is to network and build relationships with these brokers, with these retailers, with these developers. There's some, Jason, that we've talked to for 5 years about Wylie that, of course, we're going to meet with them again when we go to Vegas at ICS on. And, eventually we know they're going to come to the community. So it's just a matter of building relationships. So no matter what region you're in, if you're in Colorado, there's going to be an ICSE event in Denver. There's one in New York. There's in Texas. There's one in the Southeast. There's one in Los Angeles. So make sure you're attending these regional events. If you have questions on that, you can let us know. But I do want to shift and see if there's any questions. We went a little over an hour, so I apologize to everybody for that. But wanted to see if there's any questions. And I also wanted to let you know that our contact information is on there. So if you have questions for me, you can feel free to email me at info@theretailcoach.net, or you can feel free to email Jason at jason@wylieedc.com. But as we wait on some other questions to come in for you, Jason. So Jason, have you seen industrial or manufacturing interest pick up in the last 6 months?
Well, industrial in general, if you talk to those guys, they'll build about as much spec industrial in our market is as they can. The manufacturing sector for us, we're a little bit different, right? So we're running out of land. We're kind of in that redevelopment, revitalization phase. We've only got a couple more industrial sites to really do anything with. Overall activity, I mean, through the Dallas Regional Chamber and through the governor's office, I mean, we've seen a lot of leads come through. Distribution still moving forward, of course. Retail, the way that it's pivoted, and is still about that last mile of service and getting product to you as fast as possible with online and fulfillment. So you're still going to have distribution needs. You're still going to have manufacturing needs. The job growth alone in manufacturing. I mean, manufacturing day is coming up October 2nd. We just did our proclamation with our mayor and city council last night for manufacturing day. I mean, they've got, what was it, 4.2 or 4.6 million jobs that they've projected to be created in the manufacturing sector over the next 10 years. Like those numbers are always there. And again, it's all tied together, right? So if you have a diversified economy, you've got the jobs, the daytime population that then can be supported. You've got the residents then that come in and follow those jobs. You've got commercial really on the back end of that, right? As you start to hit densities, as you start to hit certain traffic counts, commercial starts to follow in that pattern. So again, it's still, North Texas is growing like crazy, and every community is different, or every region of the U.S. might be different, but Texas in general, I just from monitoring social media and the people that I follow, there's a new announcement in North Texas pretty much every other day with a new corporation that's moving here. I mean, I saw one for San Antonio yesterday. I mean, like all across the state, I mean, you've got new corporate expansions, influx of new jobs for this region. You've got more density that's filling in. Collin County, where I'm at, is about 1 million people now. Our community will build out probably 65, 70,000, but Collin County is slated to be about 3.5 million people. Where are you going to put them? Like further out, and as you see the density and the infill with new office product, even downtown Dallas has, I forget the exact square footage, but there was a newspaper article last year and it came out, and there was more either under construction or planned in the Frisco and Legacy West area, D&T and 121, more office product up there than in downtown Dallas. You're shifting in the city center further north. You're moving that many more people further north in the Metroplex. And then you look at Allen and McKinney, the kind of the epicenter 75 and 121, that's kind of the center of Collin County. That's the rest of the residents for our county. You're going to build 30 million square feet mixed use product over there. You're going to have retail centers that pop up in the surrounding communities just a little bit further out. So invest in infrastructure. I mean, like that's really what the main thing for me today being on here, wanted to tell everybody, again, from our standpoint too, get your sites ready. You know, if the projects slow down a little bit, you might see the pipeline change a little bit from a retail standpoint. Manufacturing should probably keep a lot of the communities busy. The job creation is still there. A lot of our manufacturers went right through COVID with no impacts other than an occasional COVID lockdown. Manufacturing sectors are all are doing pretty well in our community. Hopefully they are in all the other communities out there too, but invest in infrastructure. When the sites come back, they'll be ready to go. You know, I imagine the vacation and travel industries are going to do really well next year, especially if we come up with a vaccine, because everyone's tired of being locked up in their house, right? So we're all going to hit the road and look for opportunities to travel next year.
Absolutely. So we got another question, which I guess we both there, but it says, is it really that important to continue recruiting during a downturn? And I think the answer is yes. I think you're competing with retailers and restaurants on a daily basis, not just retailers and restaurants, you know, directly surrounding you and the communities directly surrounding you, but you're competing with them in your state. You're competing with them across the region. What I typically see happen is retailers and restaurants or a retailer will say, we're going to open 10 stores in the state of Oklahoma, or we're going to open stores in the state of Colorado. What are you doing, even during a downturn, to make sure you're one of those 10? So you cannot forget about retail, at least retail recruitment. That should be something that's continually happening, because like Jason said, deals take time. The traditional retail deal is going to be anywhere from 10 to 24 months. So you've got to stay in front of these people at all times. You have anything to add to that, Jason?
If you're not keeping your pipeline full, then you're not going to have anything to pull from in 2 to 3 years. I mean, for us, it's a pivot with BRE and workforce development in this market. So we'll have some projects that are still coming through. We've got some spec development. A lot of the new construction in our market are actually either investors that have their own construction side of the business, or they actually have their own contractors. in that space, they can keep their costs down, right? So we see a lot of that. When those deals kind of go away, I mean, what are we going to be looking at here in the middle of this next year? Like, I think there will be a lull. You see the manufacturing sector, they're still pushing out leads to the governor's office. If you're not actively promoting, then you won't know these contacts when they're ready to go. If you're not actively trying to fill your pipeline. I mean, we saw that back in the 2008, 2009. Some of those projects didn't rebound until 2012. There was about a 3-year lull, but the people that had the relationships through the downtime were the ones that reaped all the benefit when the thing picked back up, right? If they don't know who you are, especially use this time, where are all these brokers at? Are they traveling around the country? No, they're sitting at their computer. You have some people's undivided attention right now. If you're going to try and get a hold of people, do it now before they get back out and traveling again. We've got all of our conferences coming up in October, and it's like, I'll still be sitting here at the office. I'll be more productive than I ever have been. I think a lot of people are kind of in that same boat. Right now, you have the ability to get their attention. I use join.me. It's a sharing service similar to Zoom. I can share my screen with anybody. I can log in and I can be on the phone talking to somebody and say, hey, do you have a minute? Are you in front of a computer? Jump on and I give them a URL, and literally they type in the URL and type their name and hit enter. And I'm sharing my screen in real time with them. And I know that they're looking at the exact same site because I'm pointing at it. The ability to catch these people right now and market to them, I mean, you still might not have the site ready for another 12 months. All of this, I mean, like, especially if you're going through redevelopment or revitalization like we are, and I've got to get demolition quotes and environmental, and I've got to get engineering numbers all in line. I mean, like if I had a contract on it right now, would be jumping through hoops to get this stuff across the finish line. Now is a perfect time to plan for that. And then again, sites are ready when they're ready. So.
Well, and when he says he uses join.me, he's not kidding. I think in the last 6, Jason, you and I have probably used that thing 5 times together to look at potential sites 5 times. So it's a great tool to use. Just to piggyback on that, use Zoom. Don't be afraid just because you're not going to see these prospects in person. Don't be afraid to get on a Zoom call with them. I've seen a really, obviously a huge increase in us using Zoom, but we were using it prior as well. It's a way to get face-to-face with prospects and them to actually see you and be able to share your screen. Same thing with join.me. So some really good stuff there. I'm going to knock out these last 2 questions and then we're going to wrap up here. The question was, how do you obtain the cell phone data for the community? And the way that it works is the big cell phone carriers, so if it's Verizon or Sprint or AT&T, they're selling this data to third-party people, basically third-party companies. And what we do is we take that data from these third-party companies and then we make it usable. So we put it into a package that Starbucks would want to see or Costco would want to see or something along those lines. So it's you can go out there and you can get the cell phone data, but it's the way you package it. And you want to package it the way that the prospects want to see it. So if there's other questions, I saw a few other questions about cell phone technology. Just feel free to email me at info@theretailcoach.net and I can fill you in on that. But I think that's it, Jason. I think we'll wrap up with that one. Jason, first off, thanks for joining us today. I mean, like I talked about, you're a wealth of knowledge as it relates to the economic development industry, and just appreciate you making time for us today and taking time out of your busy day to do that.
Thanks for having me, Aaron. I'm happy to help. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So Jason's contact info is at the bottom, and he wanted me to make sure and say if anybody has any other questions or thoughts to reach out to him, and you can do the same for me at info@theretailcoach.net. But again, would ask that you keep an eye out. We're going to be rolling out some additional webinars as we continue forward in 2020, and we'll continue that into 2021 as well. So thanks again for joining us. And if you have any questions or would like to talk about the retail industry, we would love to do it. So thanks again.
Thanks, Aaron.
Thanks.